want to talk about leadership philosophy next. I think this is a good time because we're getting
Yeah,
into it
great.
now. So clearly, you're a lifelong learner. I mean, you do it a number of different ways, but you've mentioned not only teaching but courses you've taken that have affected you along the way. So you're formally and informally a lifelong learner. Got it. What's your leadership philosophy? What's the most important thing and work your way down?
Yeah, well, look, a piece of it is kind of how you worded it, being able to own a failure without it owning you. Or my language is being able to own a failure while not attaching any other meaning or interpretation to that failure. I failed, period. Period. That's very powerful. That's extremely powerful to take to a client. You know that. Without allowing any of the others to creep in, like, I am a failure. I'll never be good at that. I can't do that. That's not my thing, or whatever your personal version of that is.
I'll talk about this more later, but my personal version where I learned that lesson, I went to the Air Force Academy, and we had these 7 basic responses you could say as a freshman. What was amazing to me was there was one that was no excuse, sir. And if anyone ever asked you a why question, the only response you were allowed to say was no excuse. Why didn't you shine your shoes, or why didn't you get up on time, or why were you late? And the only thing you're allowed to say, you might have had awesome reasons, they just didn't matter. And I've said this before, I find that to be one of the most powerful lessons I learned. And here I am this many years later learning it again from Phill.
Look, I think that once you truly embrace that failing doesn't mean you're a failure, but it's actually failure. Okay, here it is. Failure is a necessary step towards success. Once you really embrace that, I just think you're unstoppable. So that's one lesson. I'd say another is really the more that I support people in finding their passion, the more full my heart is. So I do that with our team at Innovate. I do that with family and friends. I do that when I'm leading the leadership courses. Look, how busy we can be running companies. There's a lot to do. And your head can get in it completely and buried, and taking the time to be there for people. I look back on my career, and the times that I remember, and I think the times that I'll remember on my deathbed will be the times when I truly made a difference for someone. And that can even be firing someone, but doing it with so much love that they're clear that you got their back. Yeah, I think that's another powerful
That is
part of
powerful.
my philosophy.
So do you have this is a little lighter, but have you got any life hacks that you use to run, like you just talked about all these crazy things that you do day to day, the running a business and all that. You got any life hacks, things that make you stay focused or productive, stuff you do?
When you talk about life hacks, I think the best life hack I have found ever was doing the courses put on by Landmark Worldwide. That's the course that I told you that I did earlier. It starts with the Landmark Forum. That's like if somebody wants, go read Black Box Thinking, go do the Landmark courses, right? Anybody I'm mentoring, I give them. Go do those, right? But really, I've told you before, my larger life hack is become a student of leadership. It's not a one-time thing. I don't know. It's like I remember doing some leadership courses early on, and like getting, I could use more of this in my life. Like this, yeah, this is something that I could really use in my life overall. So it's just, it's kind of that consistency, showing up week after week with a real intention to get better at listening, at leading, at lifting up others.
I've become a lifelong leadership kind of like you. Like I don't know if I have no idea if I've done more or less. That's not the point. It's just I'm a student of it all the time, and this discussion, this failing daily thing, comes from that. right? I didn't know the black box book, but it just inherently, like when I talk with you and other people like us that at least own their businesses and others, but it was so obvious that what we all needed to do was embrace failure. So I would offer this. I'll say my number one thing is be authentic, and all things else flow from that, from my perspective. So I literally mean, for me anyway, if you're a super nice guy that gets taken advantage of by people because you're so nice, then just be that. Find other people to help you, like, get around that. If you're just an asshole, then just be an asshole, because
Right.
people will know. Like, people will, people will know if you're not being who you are, and they'll like you less. They'll like the asshole more if they're like, I know who that guy is.
You know where he
He's very
stands, right?
consistent. Yep, and he's great to deal with as long as you punch him in the nose first or whatever. Like, there's people like that, and then there's other people that are always too nice and never say what they mean, blah blah blah, and they might need someone next to them that helps them do that, but they should be who they are. So I don't know. Be authentic is one of the hardest things, because everyone always tells you to be something you're not, which doesn't mean you shouldn't get better at stuff. But we always hear growing up, I'm sure you did too, like, be a well-rounded person.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe that applies, not for me anymore. I'll speak for myself. You be a well-rounded team. You build a team around you. But if you're well-rounded, it just means you're not good at any one thing. So and I would argue my company is well-rounded, trying to be deep in some areas, and your company has made the transition to being, a mile deep and an inch wide, or whatever, like the journey. And I feel like that's the job, right? Is to keep trying.
That's exactly right, man. If anybody says they got it completely figured out, they're lying.
They're absolutely lying. That's right. Do you have any particular advice? Like, let's say we're talking to a new entrepreneur, and that could be anything. You're starting your own company, or you're a couple years into it, whatever you choose. But if you got any particular advice for a new entrepreneur, a new business owner, someone who wants to maybe go start a business, I got one of them, which was, the training courses, some of the mentorship stuff. But how about for, like, the business? What would you suggest?
Unless you are willing to endure many setbacks, don't do it. I mean, the growth that I have enjoyed as a human being has made for a very, very fulfilling life. And it's just expect that it's going to be hard. I mean, really, I can tell you that there were months and months, and it went into a few years where Lily and I would go to bed at night and just be like, are we going to survive doing this? Is it going to work out? Because it's highly likely. The odds are you're going to endure many setbacks. There's going to be a dirty prime that comes along and says they'll give you business and then takes it away. You could get doged. I don't know. There's just so many unforeseen things that come up. So you gotta be resolved that you're gonna do it. And then, you talk about the power of being authentic. I think one of the greatest things that I've gotten out of launching a business is, for me, this is my authentic expression in the world. The company is.
You mentioned Doge, and what's your take on the industry these days? Anything you want about any of those topics? What we're doing, what's going on, how's GovCon? Where do you think that's at, or what things we look out for?
I think actually for those of us who survived the Valentine's Day massacre, that Valentine's Day was the day when Doge sent out all the significant announcements for contract cuts. I think those of us that survived that are actually beginning to breathe a sigh of relief. Like, I don't know, maybe the crazy part's over, and now we can just get back to dealing with the kind of normal, highly competitive landscape that we face. I don't want to jinx anything, but I do get the sense that things are starting to find some new normal. And there's a whole lot of exciting work to do out there. Oh my gosh, AI and quantum computing are becoming less theoretical and more actionable. The tools are changing, the needs are evolving. So that's all very exciting. But look at the core of what we do. It's still very similar. You know, you work with a client, you build trust, you solve problems, you deliver value. Again, we've kind of been fortunate, you know, within those worlds of the Salesforce and Esri platforms, we have a real focus in things like wildfire and fuels management, permitting systems, water infrastructure challenges, grants management. I don't know, things that are still getting a lot of money applied to them
Right.
right now. So so yeah, it's still a little nerve wracking, but I think it's an exciting time in GovCon, and we haven't even seen. There really could be this pendulum swinging back from all of the tens of thousands of layoffs that have happened, where the government still needs to get work done, and then maybe they even become more reliant on contractors. We don't know. We don't know. That could happen.
Right. Right. I mean, clearly a potential outcome from that if there's work that needs to be done. I can tell you right now that I had a fairly simple action for GSA on my SBA account or whatever, and I can't get it done because they let all the folks go, like one of the divisions, kind of thing. And those actions either need to be done, or they need to eliminate that requirement, right? Like this is, and that's where to me that's like a simple example of they've got to find their balance. Are we going to hire some people back to do that work so they can work through the backlog? Or are they going to say we don't care about that question anymore and just say it's
Right.
no longer a requirement? So this
Yep.
is and that's the interesting balance. And I don't know. I don't get overly upset about it. I try not to. I was fortunate enough not to get like completely wiped out. I had a few friends that got hit really hard, and it wasn't like their fault, But there's a certain element of if the work needed to be done, they should be doing it, and if it didn't need to be done, they shouldn't. It's just trying to find like the real answer, right? What's
Yep.
the real answer? Because I would like to do work that actually matters. I'm sure you do too.
Right
You
on,
know,
man.
so
Right on. But by the way, you just mentioned that you went to USAFA. I went through college on a full ride Air Force ROTC scholarship.
oh,
Um, and so I was I graduated the year that the Graham-Rudman Act was passed in 1987.
okay,
And so they cut defense spending, so they couldn't. It was weird, they just spent all this money paying for my college, and then the colonel came to us and said, we don't have enough money to pay for you all in active duty. Many of you are going to need to go into the reserve. So I got a full ride and did 8 years in the reserves.
wow,
um,
wow. Were you in a reservist like 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year, or just in the inactive reserve?
it was the special program they set up where it's weird. I didn't do the 1 weekend a month. I did 3 weeks per year straight. It was this
Interesting.
special, and so yeah, I was at Wright Pat for the first 4 years. I was at Warner Robins for the second 4 years, and I did my 3 weeks every year, and yeah,
Wow. Which basically that's your. I'm sure that got calculated because that's kind of your 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year is ultimately 3 weeks, right? And so you got to do it all at once. That's
yeah,
interesting. That is really interesting. Yeah, so I graduated in '93 when they had all of the pilot cuts because of similar. Well, I'm going to say it's connected to the fall of the wall and the down
mm,
the cuts in the military, but they had a combination of poor planning and cuts had resulted in there was like no pilot slots. There was just a couple hundred people. Like, it was one of those things, right? Everyone's supposed to get. You kind of like you used to kind of have to explain if you didn't want to fly, you'd have to explain why. And then the year I graduated, they had 225 pilot slots out of the class, and I was a number like 235. So I missed
mm.
it by 10. And then they picked up. I was an alternate, and they picked up 9 of the 10. Is what I hear. So,
Oh
so
my
I
God.
didn't. So it was one of my goals. So one of my goals was to fly, and I failed on that one. Another goal I had was to own a $20 million business, which I succeeded on that one. And then my other goal, I swear to God, I had these goals when I was 21. I had three goals. I don't know why I had these. Like, I'm not sure I sat down and said, I need to have three goals. I just was always a student of having some. So I failed one entirely, and thank God I did, because it changed my life. You know, I have a wife and 3 kids and all these other things I may or may not have had. I don't know if I'd gone and been deployed 300 days a year, right?
Yep.
So I failed. I didn't get a pilot slot. I kept trying a little bit. I got the business part of it. And why 20 million? Because back then that was a lot of money. And I thought if you get 20 million, you're big enough to matter, but small enough that you can actually have a small business. The last one was to make as many other people millionaires as I can in my lifetime, which I've not succeeded on, but I'm working. So that was the then that one makes me feel good, and I work towards that. So it's not the last goal I have, but from when I was 21, those were my 3, and it's totally fine that I completely failed on one of them, like dead in the water. Well, anyway, listen, I appreciate you taking the time. It was great. Let me wrap it up and say to everybody, thank you for spending some time with us. I hope you enjoyed Phill as much as I did. I'm Bill Williams. This is Phill Thomas. We're both failing daily, and we appreciate you taking the time. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.